Howdy, tubers and footers. What you doing? Guess what I'm doing? Sitting on ice. Well, still in bed, so guess what that means? More pillow talk. Hey, so I was sitting here debating whether I should discuss what got me into even looking at Bigfoot and doing any Bigfoot stuff and getting out there, considering all of my experiences were so long ago and I was completely oblivious for all of them. You know, what was going on, what happened. So I guess understanding my backstory to make sense is I worked in the IT field, and so my job was very intense, very demanding, very high stress, and so and I was on call all the time. And so I ran a lot of the major systems involved with a lot of the companies in Alaska. And so I tended to get away and get way remote as far as possible. And I grew up doing that with my family, and that's something my family did a lot of, spending a lot of time very remote in Alaska. And so I was used to being out there alone and amongst bears, wolves, all that kind of stuff. But I always had my dad gave me his casul at a young age because I was out in the woods a lot by myself. And so I always carried my casul around, and that gave me a sense of security because I always figured if I had to draw a weapon, I want whatever it is to stop, and I don't want to have to shoot twice or have perfect aim in a situation that could be deadly. And so that's why I chose that particular piece. And it's something that I had grown up with all my life. My dad had always had. So it's just, like I said, a sense of security. So I spent a lot of times in the woods and didn't care what was around me because of that gun. And so in that sense of security, I was able to relax and enjoy myself. And so I spent a lot of time. All of my off time was as far remote as I could get. And so I had a lot of experiences and weird things, and a lot of stuff happened during those times. But I never, ever, ever considered Bigfoot. For whatever reason, I have no idea. It's not because I wasn't aware of Bigfoot, because I had watched all the movies growing up, blah, 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 blah. But I don't know. That to me is just, even when my racing partner called him, none of it ever clued in until I had leukemia and was in the hospital receiving chemotherapy. And I was stuck in the hospital for induction chemo was 6 weeks straight, and you couldn't leave, and you really couldn't have visitors, and it was touch and go. And especially because I only had 2 hemoglobins when I was brought into the hospital originally, and so I was a walking, talking miracle as it was. So we had to be very careful, and I was trying to put weight on as much as possible and, just get my health back. And so I was watching a lot of YouTube videos while in the hospital. And I was listening to Les, the survivor man, talk about his experience. And I think it was on Opie and Anthony, and maybe even Joe Rogan. But he talked about his Alaska experience where he had heard something. And when he said that, it was like, boom, it just triggered like a what? Kind of, it just was one of those things where my brain just engaged for some reason, and I just started watching a lot of Bigfoot videos, and I came across like the Sierra Sounds, and I about dropped my phone because I heard those. I've heard those plenty of times out in the woods. And one night in particular, I heard them very distinctly, very loud. Ended up having a crazy night on the, off the Deshka River, off the Big Sioux. And it was intense. And it was just me and my dog out there. And oh my gosh, it was crazy. And I'll tell that story too here eventually. But that's what made it all just come back. Like all those memories just came flooding back, and I just sat there and looked at my dad and was like, oh my God, Dad, here, what the hell? And so I just unloaded all these weird experiences and things I had seen, and stuff I had always blown off, just blew it off for whatever reason, and went about my day, because again, my work was so intense and it was easy to let things go. And like, it wasn't until I became, bedridden that, like, before that, I hadn't even looked into conspiracy theories. I had thought there was maybe like 3 or 4 conspiracy theories, JFK, the moon, like the typical ones, and oh man, when I dove into that rabbit hole, oh man, my poor analytical mind went for a ride, and is still going for a ride. But because Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, whatever you want to call it, Chupacabra, Skaskum Squatch, because of my experiences out there in the Alaska wilderness, now I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I had all of that and never. I was so oblivious, just so oblivious. And so now I'm a bit on the obsessed side to go and put all those pieces back together and figure it out, because, man, it's just too much, because all that evidence leads to, there's people that know, we just know, and we just want answers, a lot of us that have had these encounters. And so that's kind of my little journey on what got me even out there looking again in the field, and now that I'm between Alaska and Oregon, those are like the hot zones, besides Washington, obviously, and they're all over the place, but really Alaska and Oregon are like the prime remote wilderness, and habitat for something of this nature to survive. So it's just really interesting on many levels, and I don't know what I'll come across, but I intend on having fun while I do it, because any moment I am out of here and out there, I'm being kind of goofy, because, well, my medication also kind of dictates some of that. All right, well, hopefully that answers some questions on what the heck is my problem. All right, tubers and footers, I gotta get moving around. I can't lay still for very long. All right, talk to you soon. Have an awesome day. Love y'all. See you, tubers and footers.